First, thank you for coming to our presentation. We're going to be talking today about Ephesoft as an alternative for legacy document capture system. There's a slight modification because as I was writing this presentation, I come to the realization that it's not a one solution fits all kind of scenario. There are people without document capture solutions entirely. There are people, since there's quite a wide range of these legacy systems, in systems like Captiva and Kofax, that it may be a little bit different if you have the Ascent capture to the KTM solution. And so we have that kind of separated in talking about the reasons to go with Ephesoft for those various environments. So we're going to go ahead and start continuing. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about why ZIA. You know, what does ZIA play in the role of Ephesoft? What do we do as a corporation? Then we're going to introduce Ephesoft a little bit. We're going to start talking about, as I mentioned, that separation for those at Ephesoft that never had document capture and then had maybe a legacy traditional document capture, and then those who have a legacy intelligent document capture. Then we're going to go inside of a demonstration itself. So why ZIA? So we're a solutions from paper to mobile, meaning that we provide, we separate ourselves from other technical vendors or a lot of technical vendors by saying that we are solution sales. So what we try to do is give you end-to-end solutions, because what we don't do is try to sell you a technology and it's merely a piece of the puzzle. We're people that want to actually gain value within the organization and be able to solve an entire problem as opposed to just a piece of that problem. And so we deal with content solutions. And so, of course, we're part of enterprise content management. We'll talk to that a little bit more. Intelligent document capture, which we're going to be talking mostly around today. Portal solutions, enterprise integration, and mobility. And I'd like to really talk about the core to ZIA is integrity. We have a firm belief that we take care of our clients, employees, and our partners, that everything falls into place. And we started business in 2003, and so far it's worked out pretty well. We're also one of the Colorado companies to watch in 2012. So I want to talk just briefly around our Content Anywhere solutions. This is the solutions that we talk to where we might, and you're going to start seeing some of the partner software that we work on with these solutions. So inside of the core of these is Alfresco for the most part. That can be a different content management system within your organization. It doesn't necessarily mean that that you can't incorporate one of these technologies with something that's existing, like the Documentums of the world or the SharePoints of the world. Ephesoft plays well with all those, or if the core of the world is an ERP system. But these are some of the vendors that we work with and some of the partner companies in which we're recognized within. So within the Ephesoft world, usually there's a capture piece to it. So whether or not that be paper or something that you're already getting digitally within images, TIFFs and PDFs, emails, what have you, that you're able to push those into your core repository, and once it's inside your core repository, then you have a lot of capabilities around integrating those with other systems like your Salesforce, like your SAP systems, and we'll be talking to that a bit. You also can start deploying those to your mobile solutions. We have several mobile products that are around case management and content. You can see some of those around there. We're involved with the Alfresco mobile solution that was based off a previous project that we had, which is more generic CMIS, which is Content Management Interoperability Services, called Fresh Docs, so that can tie into your FileNet P8 system or your Documentum 6.7, et cetera, as well as Alfresco and Nuxio and some of the open source products. And you can also push this out to various ways of materializing that data, whether it be using Alfresco Share, which comes with Alfresco, that you need a portal solution around that content like Liferay, or you need a case management solution like Open Workdesk. So we talked to some of these partnerships. We're the Partner of the Year for both Ephesoft and Alfresco for 2012, so that's some of our accolades. And we're also a partner with WeWebU, which you guys might not be familiar with, which is a company out of Germany, has a really good product that plays well with Alfresco and other systems dealing with case management and tighter desktop integration. Liferay, we're a gold partner, which is a portal solution, and MuleSoft, which is an enterprise service bus. So we also deal with various verticals, whether that be legal or high-tech, financial services, healthcare, publishing, supply chain, public sector solutions or government solutions, and higher education. And we'll be talking to some of those and how they're incorporated within our solutions as well. So let's talk to the reason that we're here. While I was coming up with this, initially we had the conversation and we were coming up with the marketing because it's really easy just to say, okay, well, it's the alternative to Kofax or Captiva. But there's going to be various reasons for various people. And we can't create a blanket statement saying, comparing apples to apples because it depends on where you're at in that chain. And so Captiva and Kofax, and that's one of the benefits around going with a product line like Ephesoft, have a large set of product offerings, whether it be just desktop capture, moving all the way up to intelligent document capture. And Ephesoft gives you all of these features, so it's really hard to say why you're going to move up to this, because it's not necessarily just saying, hey, you're going to have a huge cost savings because you're moving from Ascent Capture and you had one of those or two, 5 of those seats of Ascent Capture and you're moving to Ephesoft. That's like comparing apples to sandwiches. It just doesn't make much sense. So we're going to talk to all of these various reasons. So let's go ahead and start off with the first. So the first one is those that have really no capture intelligence. So that might be that you're using the out-of-the-box, you're just getting an image, scanning software, and you're being able to push that into your content management system and then manually index and classify that. So why would you then move to something like Ephesoft? The reason that you would, and some of these savings you might not seen from just a software specific savings, because it might have been, hey, I bought the scanner, I got free software. But where you might be spending time is money. Accuracy is money. All of these things are cost the organization one way or another. And so by incorporating something like Ephesoft, what you're able to do is do auto-classification. So being able to train the system to be able to understand what a particular document type is, classify that, and because of that classification, extract information off of that, which goes to the next part, auto-extraction. And we're going to be talking about what that means in more detail with Ephesoft, because some people might have and this is another piece to that, there's not really a one solution fits all, a notion of what extraction is. And so to some people, extraction means that they are going to have a barcode, and that barcode is going to get lifted, and then it's going to have an index filled in it. To some people, it might be zonal recognition, which means that there's going to be a particular part to a particular page, and you're looking in this particular area for a value. And then to some people, it might be, and we'll be talking about this, free-form extraction, which means that look for a pattern or look for a particular label and look next to that and then be able to extract that value. And we'll talk to what Ephesoft brings to the table when it comes to extraction. So where it saves money and the reasons you might be moving into a solution like this is that there's less manual processing. So there's, I know organizations that might be offshoring, depending on the vertical, they might have between 10 to 100 people that are indexing and classifying documents, splitting, which means that like the assembly of the document, saying that this is where the start of a document is and the end of the document, because they might just be scanning hundreds of pages at a given time, which is considered a batch, and then have people do that separation and then classify each document. And then after that classification, be able to specify the indexing of that document. And so having a system do that you can scale appropriately, it also gives you the more timely turnaround, more accurate turnaround, because you're having less reliability that somebody's having a good day, or they're not trying to get out early on a Friday, so they're just whipping through the batch. This is something that you train, and then you deal with the exceptions as opposed to dealing with the whole load. So you're trying to automate 80%, 90% of the documents that are going through the system as opposed to having to touch every single document. So the next storyline is more functionality. So this might be somebody that might have something that has some more traditional functionality like the Kofax Ascent Capture or Captiva Capture Quick Scan Pro, which gives you some capability. So this gives you the capability of defining jobs and being able to specify what kind of document types, being able to lift some of that, what I mentioned before, that zonal extraction or that barcode. But typically what you're doing is and I'll get to this, is there's a lot of pre-processing inside of this kind of solution where you're still creating batches of one specific document type and putting separator sheets or barcodes that you have stickers and putting it on the first page for the system to understand how to break apart or do that assembly of the document types. This is where Ephesoft brings to the table a lot more functionality. So it's really hard to say, what does it cost comparatively to what I'm paying for maintenance for one of these tools today. So it might be equivalent, it might be a little bit more, but where you're going to be saving money, and we'll talk to this, is all of the advanced features that you would have that you might have never even considered having before, because it was just way far-fetched in the sense of the cost of a system that would be able to do that kind of functionality. So some of the benefits and the reasons that you would move from a Kofax Ascent Capture or Captiva Capture would be moving to a client-server architecture, which includes a web scanner. So that client-server architecture means that people can log in using their web browser, and they still be able to scan using a Twain device. A Twain device is very common, and be able to scan directly to the server. And of course, you can still set up that batch class to process emails, to be able to process, look at particular network folders that are files are getting dropped in, and so they can still process in that fashion. But what's really nice is when I'm upgrading this, instead of having 1 or 12 or 50 different scan stations that are very specific, when I'm trying to upgrade those, then I have like a single location or a couple servers, depending on if I'm using a high availability architecture of Ephesoft, a handful of servers to be able to upgrade as opposed to every single workstation. I have heard of a story about one of these products that they were one of the more advanced products that they had spent, I think, 9 months upgrading, I think, 100 workstations, planning and upgrading about 100 workstations. And then they found out that there was a new patch that was released that following year. So they basically were at ground one again pretty much as soon as they started, or as soon as they completed their first upgrade, from the planning to the execution of that upgrade. So it really is important. I'll mention that client server a couple times in these slides because still, if you have one of those KTM solutions that we'll be discussing later, or any sort of advanced intelligent document capture, that you'll still find benefit in being able to have this client-server architecture. So one of the things that these tools do not have is OCR classification. So OCR classification means that I can train the system to be able to understand a particular document type, a form type, and then be able to classify it according to the words on the page, as opposed to having to have a specific layout or look a specific way. So what you're doing is you're using the technology much like you would the entire web, in the sense of I'm looking for a particular keyword or keywords, and then find me the information that I want. It kind of uses that same notion of saying, okay, well, I'm looking at the words on this page, and that's the front page to an invoice. That's a W-2 document. Because of what I've trained it with, it understands that kind of document and understands the overlap and the importance of those words on the page. The second piece is freeform extraction. Like I said before, these tools have the capability of being able to pull information from a barcode or from a zone. Some of them even have the capability of being able to do OCR recognition and then the user index manually by clicking or rubber banding an area of that particular page. Freeform extraction means that I can give it several different ways of being able to find the information that I want. So it could be as simple as saying, okay, find me a Social Security number on this entire document. And the pattern of a Social Security number is very well known, and it's really unique. So I can just say, okay, well, find me something with 3 digits and a dash, and 2 digits and a dash, and 4 digits on the entire document, and it can pull out that information. So I'm not having to say that it's on the first page in this particular zone or in this particular box of information. Just find me that information. The next piece is that you might be able to say what's known as a key value pair. And so key value pair means that it might not be that unique within it. Let's say I'm looking for a date. So there might be several dates on an invoice, but I might be looking for a due date. And so that due date, I might look for those actual words inside of the label and saying, look for the words due date, and look next to it, to the right of it, and capture this particular pattern. So that still gives me the capability of being able to have that on the first page, the last page. So it could cover several different layouts. When you're talking about invoices, you might be talking about an accounts payable certain formats of this document. But it might cover 40% of them by saying, okay, look for due date and look to the right of it. And it's not necessarily in a particular zone. It's not necessarily have a particular separation or fixed pixel value between that key and that value, but it's still able to extract it. Another piece that's not common with these kind of solutions is the table extraction. So being able to get line items from a table and extract that information, we'll go through that. And being able to get handwriting recognition and checkbox recognition. So doing that, what's known as kind of like the ICR, OMR, being able to understand that character recognition or the markup recognition, being able to get that value and index those values. And one of the things is that these tools like these desktop tools, they really are difficult to get extracted. Some of them have the capability of having small scripts in particular areas, but Ephesoft, even though it's not required, has a nice framework for those that want to extend it or be able to integrate it to other systems, being able to do that and have the full power of the Ephesoft system. So this is the next line of story, so the more value, which I would like to, tools like Kofax KTM or Captiva Advanced Recognition, the capability of being able to, why would you move from one of those systems to the Ephesoft solution? And so one of the reasons is that there's no click charges. So you guys are, if you have one of these solutions, are probably acutely aware of the monthly, quarterly, yearly volume restrictions, or you bought in this and you get some warnings that specify that you're getting close to that, and would you like to buy another lump sum? And so it's like having a Kinko's within your own organization. Ephesoft doesn't. It does away with that. So you can scale the system, of course, depending on your requirements for the volume, for the particular the SLA, essentially how fast you need to process documents. If you need to turn them around that same day in a public sector kind of solution, you might scale it differently. But they're not something that's counting the pages that are going through the system or having to double pay for it because you have to process something again. One of the other main reasons to move on is that you can actually train the system for classification with 1 to 2 samples of that document type. As you know, or you may know if you have one of these other solutions, that it might take 50 to 100 document types to be able to do good classification or classification pretty accurately. And so if you have a large batch class that might have hundreds of document types, you might be talking about tens of thousands of samples to be able to get classification to work correctly. And now, even with that, you can move into the hundreds of documents that you need to find. And it's very difficult to find those tens of thousands. A lot of times that they just don't exist, or they know that document exists, but they can't dig up a sample, or you might have subject matter experts disagreeing on what a sample is for that particular document. And then coming up with 50 or 100 of those is very hard. So the amount of time that just part of the engagement takes, much less training the system in actuality, is just very costly and not, it's time restrictive and cost restrictive. The next piece is there's no station charges. So there's not something monitoring and saying this is a name station or I have a floating license for a particular workstation. I log on and I have the capability of being able to scan, be able to classify, be able to do indexing. Of course, we're talking about the exceptions, and we'll be seeing that inside of the demo, as opposed to every single one of them. But I can just log on a station that has a web browser. So something that has Firefox or Chrome or Internet Explorer, and I want to do one of these functionalities, I just log on and be able to do it. Of course, you have to have access to, whether that be through VPN or inside of a firewall, to the Ephesoft server, but that's going to be the only requirements there. There's no module charges, so some of these advanced tools, it's saying, okay, well, if you want to do invoice extraction, it's this. If you want to have more than 5 field types, it's this. If you want an OCR full text module, it's this. Various import and export connectors, it's this. Ephesoft is Ephesoft when it comes to the mailroom automation portion, and it's charged by CPU. They do have a cloud version that has the capability of saying, okay, I'm just going to use it in a very small fashion, and there's a hosted solution for that. But you just scale the system appropriately. There's high availability architectures, and so you have that failover and load balancing capability. But you're not worried about, okay, well, now I moved it to a different division inside of my organization, and they need 3 more of these pieces, and I need to increase my volume count and everything else. You're able to just turn it on, create your batch class, and start working on it. So that brings to the next piece. Because of all of these things, you can save money. Which initially that's what we're coming in with, was saying, okay, well, you can save money, but like the previous 2, you might not be saving money. You might be spending money if you don't have any document capture when it comes to the software itself. But when it comes to the accuracy, the amount of people that it's taking to actually get the work done, we're talking about the turnaround time, that's where you're saving the money on all these different stories. But of course here, then this is that cost savings when it comes to the actual software purchase or subscription. So that's, depending on what these modules that you're looking at, you have a savings between 60 and 90% from those competing technologies. It also has flexible plans, and I didn't mention here that I mentioned earlier, but they have that cloud version if you're not using it that much, or you want to be able to just create some sort of SaaS, use that SaaS model to be able to do classification and extraction on your documents. But they have purchase and subscriptions. Initially, they came out with their subscription model, which gives you the capability of being able to say, okay, well, I can come in at the same cost that I'm paying for essentially maintenance and still save money if you're having like a KTM or advanced recognition solution, and be able to annually subscribe to it. But in a lot of people's budgets, they found that people were still looking for the more classic model of being able to say, okay, well, I want to purchase the software and then have a very small subscription or maintenance later on. So they have both models depending on your procurement and how you want to actually go about the system, and you can kind of use both of them. So if you wanted to create a beachhead and prove it out for a particular division and start off with a subscription base, and then the next year you decide to go to a purchase, you're able to do that as well. One of the biggest, so we're an implementer, so we understand these other classic models of support. And one of the biggest reasons why I enjoy so much working with the Ephesoft product and the people is they're just responsive and receptive support group. So a lot of times it gets shunned off, and it's my onus to prove that from these other classic vendors that it is, a problem, and they say, well, it works on my end kind of statement, or I'm starting off with the lowest level support, and they're like, did you turn the power on and off? And so it takes a long time to get to the actual resolution. Whereas the folks at Ephesoft they want to create, much like Zia, everybody to be a referenceable client. And so they want to make everybody happy, and that's inclusive of resolving if there's any issues that pop up, but also in the sense of the roadmap and what kind of functionalities are important to you. So they have a large roadmap, but when it comes to people echoing the same kind of functionality over and over again, that gets pulled in. So you can actually have some sort of voice when it comes to the direction of the product, which is outstanding to me and unheard of from some of these legacy vendors. I mentioned again the client server. If you're coming from one of these more legacy applications, that whole capability of having a USB or a dongle that's sticking out of a particular box or boxes, your servers, and then be able to have each side of each client station. It's still can save you money in just maintenance and in IT support for being able to say, okay, well, we have a single location or locations, a handful of locations depending on your architecture, that we have the Ephesoft servers and we can upgrade those servers. So let's talk a little bit about intelligent document capture. And so it is enterprise class. It's based on open standards, so it uses a Java stack. So a lot of people, instead of coming up to speed with these legacy proprietary huge systems and that they created their own standards and such, this was based off of a Java stack that is open standards. It is cloud ready, so that you can still put it on premise, but you could deploy it to the cloud if you want, and create your own SaaS model if you want. And it's a capture solutions for many different verticals, whether it be mortgage, banking, insurance, healthcare, accounting, and much more. So some of those solutions might be around invoice processing. We mentioned invoice or order processing, being able to look at a document that has line items, looking for a document that has totals and amounts, due dates, and then be able to put them inside of an ERP system or being able to push them inside of a content management system for processing. It could be medical claims processing or patient records processing, being able to identify who that medical record is for, or who that insurance claim is for. It could be for any sort of insurance claims or policy processing. We do it all the way from life to mortgage to various insurance claims and processing. Typically for both for intake and for people that are submitting claims. It could be used for records management and government documents, being able to get them immediately from the document form, identify what kind of document it is, and because of that document, being able to automate that and put it in a particular disposition inside of an appropriate records management end system. Could be benefits forms, be able to employee records, so it could be human resource kind of solutions. And there's much more to this that it can be used for. It is a horizontal solution, and we're verticalizing it. So the key features, and some of those we touched on before, it's 100% web-based, both the administration and the operator. The content-centric architecture, which we talked about, it understands the document. You can still use, it still has the power of being able to identify if you have some documents that you want to do barcode classification. It still has that capability. It still has image, so it looks like, if it looks a particular way, it still has that capability, but its true power comes with its content-centric architecture. Being able to understand what a document, the words on a document are, and then be able to classify it in that fashion. Classification and extraction, like I said, without those barcodes or separator sheets, that takes away all that pre-processing. So many people that are working in mailrooms that might be your subject matter experts are spending a lot of time doing manual processing of just sticking pieces of paper or sticking stickers on documents to be able to classify those documents. Do it within the system. So let the system do it, and even if there are some that have to be manually assembled or classified, you can do that in system as well. Free-form extraction, like we mentioned a while ago, you might be able to just say a regular expression like a social security number or that key value pair capability. It uses RecoStore on the back end, so that's a product that you may have been that you may be aware of if you're using one of these more legacy systems. So it's a best-of-breed OCR engine. So that's what it uses for its OCR, its character recognition, and its markup recognition. So if you're looking for a particular checkbox to see if it's a conventional loan, it still has that capability as well. The fuzzy database mapabilities have something around where I can do a database lookup. So I can have a particular index field, and then because of that, I can look in a column, and then I can map other values. They do have that capability within Ephesoft as well, but also took that a step further in saying, okay, well, there might be information on the document that might be very difficult. Say we're having an accounts payable, an invoice processing project. And to define an extraction of, say, a vendor name, it might be very laborious because I have 1,000 kinds of vendors to be able to say, okay, I can extract this value and I have an internal vendor ID that I want to persist or index to this document and be able to map that. Ephesoft has the capability of saying, okay, here, send this to all the contents of this document to this back-end system and find the best row that matches it. So if I had a vendor name on there and I found it inside of the document anywhere, then it would be able to map that vendor name, and because of that vendor name map that vendor ID. So it's a really neat technology. If you're more interested about it, please contact me and I can show you a demonstration. And we talked about the framework of Ephesoft a little bit, but it has capability of having pluggability. I'm sure that that's a word because it's on a presentation slide, and scriptability. So the pluggability means that there's these steps in the mailroom automation workflow that does that classification and extraction. You can add on to that. So if you had a custom plugin because you have a proprietary system and you want to be able to do some sort of validation against it, or you want to push it inside of that system, you're able to do it. Same thing with the scriptability. If I wanted to normalize a date, or I can still use these scripts to be able to validate from a back-end system using web services, you can still do something like that. It has CMIS integration, so it has Alfresco Direct Connect model mapping, but when you say Alfresco, CMIS is what they want to try to turn into the SQL of the SQL for content management systems. And so what that means is that they are trying to have that interconnect. So when I say CMIS, it's a standard from the Oasis. We sit on that the board as well with people from Microsoft and EMC and Alfresco and Nuxio. That gives you this general communication mechanism. So it's not just Alfresco, it is Documentum, it is SharePoint, it is your FileNets, it is various more and more every day. Even some systems like your ERP systems and ESB systems are now starting to support CMIS as an integration point. It has LDAP and Active Directory integration, so I can specify a particular batch class and the groups that can process individual instances of those batch class. So they won't see, HR won't see accounts payable, won't see any sort of benefits processing, or you can have them inclusive if you want them as well. And there's browser-based scanning included, so I can browse directly from a Twain device from my search from my system, just using a web browser to the server for being able to do this classification and extraction processing. And one thing that makes it very unique in the sense of these back-end systems, these legacy systems, sorry, don't really have this capability, is it has now web services. And so if I wanted to use the power of Ephesoft to be able to embed within my solution, but not necessarily have somebody know about Ephesoft at all, then I have these web services, these RESTful web service calls that allow me to say, okay, OCR this document, or apply these extraction rules for this particular document. So you're still able to get a lot of this functionality, which is ever expanding. They're going to expand it quite a bit with 3.1 and the capability of what you can do and the functions that it has to be able to embed this solution inside of some other solution that you're creating. So how does Ephesoft work? So Ephesoft, you're able to get various sources, and then you're able to identify your categories. And so this is when we start doing the consulting, or you're doing your consulting of saying, okay, well, we're going to process loan applications and appraisals and invoices and letters and such. And then once we're able to define those, then we get samples of those documents. So we start feeding the system samples of those documents, and then it learns from those document types. Once we have had the system understand what those document types, then we send them through Ephesoft, these different batch classes, and it's able to classify these documents accordingly no matter what the source is. So we're sending them from the paper docs, we're sending them from email, we're sending them from fax, and it's able to distribute and classify those documents from any one of these sources. And because of the classification, then we have different fields that we want to extract off those different kind of documents. So we might be getting Social Security number off of loan applications, dates off of 1040s, amounts off of appraisals, etc. And then once all of this is done, since this is not a content management repository, then we process it for archival or for further business process, whether it be an ERP system or your content system. So let's move to a demo. So I'll probably have to renew my session here. And so what you're seeing here, I have two different tabs open. One of them is the administration, and one of them is the batch, the list, the operators. And so the operators, the whole goal of this is to automate most of it, but I have some that are stopping in particular steps within the workflow on purpose. That way you can see what an operator would do to deal with the exceptions, because that's the true, I mean, it does have the capability of, if you wanted to force somebody to validate the index data, or do kind of a double-blind capability of being able to do the classification or extraction, you're able to do that. But right now, the goal of this is to automate most of this process. So the way that I have it configured right now, it's for being able to process most of these. And I could get it all the way, so of course I have a finite number of document types here that I'm working with and samples. And so I could make it just go all the way through and they would never see it within the operator interface, but I want you to be able to see it. So within the administration interface, what we see here is we have different batch class definitions. And so I'll just go through this quickly, and of course, please reach out to me if you want a more detailed explanation of how this works or what you would do to get to this level. So we have a couple here. Most of these are templates. These are out-of-the-box templates in which you would base other specific batch classes on. So here we have a mortgage processing batch class. Inside of there, we have the workflow, and so we have a particular configuration we would do within there, specify these different capabilities of being able to do classification. Right now we're using OCR classification. And then we define our document types. So here we have quite a bit of document types, because and not in full, because a mortgage solution would have more document types. But inside of the document types, we have different definitions of the index fields. So in here we have a finite number of index fields we're trying to pull off a HUD document. You can see here that I have a very high threshold. That is not that meaningful to you, but it's something that is making it stop within inside of the review. And this is how I stop it inside of the review. If I put this into some reasonable level, then it would go right through into validation. So inside of my index fields, I can now make definitions on how to extract information. In this case, I'm saying using that key value pair extraction, saying look for the key of loan number, so literally look for the word loan number, and look to the bottom right for 6 to 8 digits and extract that information. And then, of course, if I wanted to, I can test that document, and I can have a bunch of test documents and be able to say, okay, for this particular document, I was able to extract that value, and I can validate it before I deploy any of that definition. So it's a little bit more complex than that. It has more capabilities of being able to do, the fixed form extraction, et cetera. But I don't want to focus in on that. That's something that you can reach out to me and tell me exactly what you would like to see, and we can make a demonstration for your specific requirements. It also has the capability of managing the batch instances, so I can see what's in flight here. Of course, there's a lot more that happened. There was, deleted ones that have finished. Things of that nature. This default gives me what's kind of running and what's in a particular state, ones that are still new and have not been processed. The workflow management gives you the capability of being able to see what kind of plugins or steps in the workflow that I have. And then, of course, I can add new ones, and there's ways that there's documentation that specifies how I'd create my new plugin and then add it to my workflow. Folder management gives me the capability of being able to give it samples and not having access to the file server. And reports gives me the capability of looking at some diagnostics around how the system is performing. So within the operator world, what we have here is we have some in review and some in validation. I'm using an administration user, so I see both the invoices, batches of the invoices, and batches of mortgage. So what's key about that is if I were not in both of them, I might just see one of them. If I was just in the mortgage group, I would not see the invoice batch instances. So if we go into one of these, then what we can see here is that we have these check marks and these question marks. That threshold that I pointed out is the reason why this stopped. It still assembled it correctly with the 4 pages that are part of this HUD document, and so I can look at each one of the document pages. But it's just that the threshold was higher than its confidence that it was that document type. Again, if I put something reasonable, this would have just flew through the what's known as the review or this classification stage. What you're also able to do is that you're able to do assembly. And so assembly means that I have the capability of splitting, duplicating, merging documents to make the right document. And all of these are based on shortcuts. So they try to keep it simple. And so they try to keep it simple and also give the capability of being the operator of being able to do these in high volumes and very fast. And so what they didn't want to do is make this convoluted structure of buttons and menus and everything else. So you're able to do all this functionality from keystrokes or shortcuts. So if we want to push this forward, we can start looking at the rest of the documents and be able to say that that's the loan application. So these are not necessarily in any order. We didn't create this job that understood one document type. We just fed it a bunch of pages, and it understood how to separate those accordingly. These are all various lengths of documents, and so it separated it accordingly and was able to classify them appropriately. So if we press on this document and we'll say, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and start processing this because this has to go back to the server, because now that we have the classification is going to dictate what index fields are going to be part of those document types, and therefore indicates what kind of extraction rules we have for those indexed. So let me go to one in validation. And so this time, let's go ahead and start pointing out some of the key features around some of those handwriting recognition, some of the scripts that you can use, and let's look at one of this invoice one. And so you can see here, and it just dropped me to the second document because it thought that it was able to extract everything from the first document that I specified as having particular validation rules. This one had a validation rule in which it was not supposed to have a particular set of numbers and letters. And so now that I fixed it, it says, okay, well, would you like to press on with this particular document type? But I'm going to say no, because we're going to take a look at a couple other things here. In this first document type, what you can see is we have an invoice. We have some handwriting up here. If I selected the one that was handwriting, which I had a RICO-Star project for invoice types associated with this document type, so I had a zonal say look up in the top right and look for a handwriting recognition, then I can see where that was extracted. I can start looking at all these fields and where that information was extracted. I mentioned a while ago that there's that fuzzy database. I used that within this particular setup, so it doesn't know where it picked up this particular these values because it picked it up from the database. It just sent all the contents over, and it found the word staff mark here. And because it found the word staff mark, it also included this vendor ID I had in a database of all fives. You can see that it's very much like that within the next invoice that it found. We found the ACSC inside of the as the vendor name, and we mapped the billing code to something in the database. Another thing that we have here is that we have this table, and we created extraction rules for the table extraction. So now I'm able to see what values were extracted from here. I can select various lines, and it showed me exactly where it extracted that information. So let's show another thing around scripting, and of course I'm just going through a lot of this functionality very quickly, but we have a finite amount of time. Let's say I want to change this to 8, and because somebody had fixed that and said that they worked 8 that day, and then I can say I have this calculate total hours script in the background that calculates all those values. I can go ahead and recalculate that, and then we see that that was updated with 36 hours. And so I just showed you a lot of functionality right there, but I wanted to show you. Another thing that you can do within this batch world is this batch instance, the validation screen, is let's say that we have something that was not populated. So in here we have a validation rule that this is a float value, so it shouldn't have commas, so we can fix that. In some of these other ones, I might not have extracted. I don't have a validation against this, but I may want to extract the Social Security number, so a vendor can, or operator can say, I want to extract that information. It's right here. There we go. We extracted the information by clicking on it. You can also rubber band information. So that's what you can do. That's a subset of what you can do within the Ephesoft experience. Going back to our presentation, I wanted to first mention before we open up for questions, which we're about to do, that we also have certified training classes. The next one is going to be in Colorado in February, the 19th through the 21st, I believe. You can go to the ephesoft.com and look for the certified training class and register for that. And then the next one would be in California, in Southern California, in Laguna Hills in April, the first week of April, I believe, the 2nd through the 4th. And then, of course, you can read the Intelligent Document Capture with Ephesoft book to come up to speed on how you create these batch classes and give you some information around what you can do within a coding level, all the way from the starting with the basics of how you create these batch classes, how you train it for classification, extraction, etc. So with that, I think that we'll open up for questions. So thank you very much for coming to the presentation.
Great, thanks, Pat. Again, if you have any questions for Pat, feel free to enter them into the chat function on your GoToWebinar toolbar. So the first question is from Paul. He says, I'm wanting to add new metadata to existing alfresco docs. Can this be done with Ephesoft? Wow,
oh, yes you can. So one of the features, and I mentioned a subset of functionality that we have inside of Ephesoft. One of the things I did not mention, I mentioned that there's a CMIS export. There's also a CMIS import. So what I can do is monitor particular folders and look for data, metadata saying that this needs further classification, what have you. It could be a part of some property, and then it would switch that value, bring it into Ephesoft. You can process it again, then it would get dropped inside of Fresco again. And then what you can do is persist some of the information around like what the node ID is, and then you can just either update it with that information, overwrite it, or you can just update the metadata and then drop that process document. So yes, you can, and contact me on my email, which is on the feed now, and we can talk about that a little bit more if you'd like.
Great. We've had a couple of folks ask if they will have access to your slides and the recording. Absolutely yes. Pat will post them to SlideShare tomorrow. And we will also post the recording to our YouTube channel, which everybody will get in an email link to them tomorrow. Next question. So if a company wants to migrate to Ephesoft from a legacy system like Kofax, is this something that VIA can help with, and what does that entail?
So yes, I mean there would be some due diligence, but you have most of your homework done. If you have one of these solutions like KTM already incorporated, typically you will have more samples than are required to then transfer that classification to an Ephesoft world. So yes, yes we can, and yes we have.
Okay. I had a couple questions also about the ICR capability with RecoStar. What degree of accuracy can we expect from the ICR feature expressed as a percentage?
So if we're talking about the handwriting expression, handwriting capabilities of doing that, and go ahead and put in the window if you're not talking about handwriting. Handwriting is as good as handwriting is. The more specific that you can get with the pattern that's going to be part of that, the more accurate you're going to have. So if I have something like a Social Security number, you can have a high degree of accuracy because I know that it's digits with dashes in a particular pattern. If it's free-form extraction, you're going to have less so accuracy. So it's all dependent on how you can constrain that pattern. You can also do something that's known as a dictionary and apply it to a particular field. So if you applied a dictionary to a field, say that you were extracting something like a city name or a state, then you can, with a high degree of accuracy, saying that it's a state in the United States, and it's one of these 50 different variables, you get a high degree of accuracy. So I think that it's kind of depends on what you're trying to accomplish accuracy rate. If you have a dictionary or a very specific pattern, you can get a high degree of accuracy, and I would say within, especially if you have a dictionary, you can get in that 90–100% of accuracy. If you have a very open thing, something like a mailing address that's just open, just various text inside of this area, your degree of accuracy is going to be pretty low.
So you mentioned a few of the verticals that you work in, mortgage, things like that. So can you talk about the roles that Ephesoft plays inside these verticals and specific use cases?
Sure. So within the financial, some of these are very verticalized, and some of these are horizontal. That could be part of any organization or enterprise. Within the financial services, which of course has the largest amount of information that's coming to them, whether it be paper or TIFFs or PDFs via email or just delivery. We have quite a few within the mortgage world, and so pre and post closing documents that are getting processed there. The classification's key on there, because there could be 250 document types if you're trying to refinance your house, and then being able to how to classify those and having rules set up on the back-end system saying, I need this, this, and this document before I can do completion in business process. We do a lot of those kind of solutions. Same thing that goes with insurance. So for both like mortgage insurance or life insurance, all these policies that are getting created, whether it be a new policy or it be claims processing, we've dealt with that. Within the public sector, so the government solutions, we've done human services type of applications where people are applying for benefits. We have one that's actually integrated to other state systems, so making sure that they're not applying for benefits in other counties or the same benefits in other counties, making sure that they validate that user or that person that's applying for those benefits or asking for the benefits is the right person that they're giving it to. Within healthcare, patient records, being able to get patient IDs and be able to specify what kind of documents they are. And then more horizontal, we've done a lot of accounts payable type of applications where we're dealing with a bunch of invoice types, and we're having to figure out how to, what that total amount is, or we're trying to reconcile the line item differences, or we're just trying to figure out the due dates and push it on to an ERP system like SAP. So those are the type of solutions that we've dealt with within the vertical.
Okay. Does DSL or recommend capture devices like scanners, faxes, etc.?
Yes, and so we have various partnerships, and I think it's depending on what you're trying to accomplish with. So that could be, anything from Kodak scanners to Fujitsu scanners. So it depends on what you're trying to get accomplished. It could be all the way to IBML or OPEX type of devices.
Great. All right, well, I think that wraps up our question and answer session. If you have any more questions for Pat, again, everyone will get an email tomorrow with his contact information, so you can reach out to us directly. You also get the links to our slides in recorded version. So thank you for attending, and have a great day.